welcome to episode 19 of Attention Engineer. I'm Laura Kidd, a Bristol-based music producer, songwriter and independent solo artist making music as Penfriend. In this noisy world, the gift of someone's attention is priceless, so thank you for joining me on my mission to inspire creativity in every listener, through having the honest conversations I've always hoped for with some of the artists I admire the most. Greetings, dear listener, and thank you so much for tuning in. My heart is thoroughly warmed by all the wonderful feedback for last week's conversation with Miles Hunt. It's a really wonderful thing to witness such an engaged and supportive audience at work. So kudos to Miles and the Wonder Stuff, of course, for making such great music in the first place, but also to their fans for being so welcoming and for giving this podcast a chance. Thank you. So if you're a returning listener today, hooray and welcome. And if you're a brand new listener, hello and welcome to you too. Thank you for pressing play on this podcast today. Apart from replying to lovely tweets about my conversation with Miles, I spent the last week working very, very, very hard on finishing off the last few songs for my new record, and I'm delighted to say that I am finally on to the last one. My completely arbitrary, self-imposed deadline of last Sunday did not work out, but that's okay. I would never ever want to rush completing such a big project. It's way more important to give each song the time and focus needed to get it where it needs to go, and I'll be right back to that just as soon as this episode is ready for your ears. In other music news, I'll be playing an online show next Thursday the 29th of October, starting at 8 p.m. UK time. And alongside sharing some of the newest Penfriend songs, there will be a special spooky Halloween-ish appearance from the ghost of She Makes War, celebrating the 10th anniversary of the launch gig of her debut album, Disarm. The gig is free and open to all, so do come and visit my website penfriend.rocks to get 2 free songs when you sign up to the mailing list, and then I can send you all the information about the gig. Right then, onwards to today's guest. Google the name Lemn Sissay and all the returning hits will be about him because there is only one Lemn Sissay in the world. Lemn Sissay is a BAFTA-nominated, award-winning writer, international poet, performer, playwright, artist and broadcaster. He has read on stage throughout the world, from the Library of Congress in the United States to the University of Addis Ababa, from Singapore to Sri Lanka, Bangalore to Dubai, from Bali to Greenland, and Wigan Library. He was awarded an MBE for services to literature by the Queen of England. Along with Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and Margaret Atwood, he won a Pen Pinter Prize in 2019. He is Chancellor of the University of Manchester and an honorary doctor from the Universities of Huddersfield, Manchester, Kent and Brunei. He is Dr. Lemn Sissay. He was the first poet commissioned to write for the London Olympics and poet of the FA Cup. Without further ado, let's get to our conversation.
Wait a minute, didn't we do something?
We did, yeah.
We did something. Oh my God, it's you.
Hello.
I'm so happy. I remember you. Of course it's you. You're ace.
Oh, what?
Great.
I'm glad I'm recording that. That's going in the podcast.
Okay, good. I'm glad it is.
Well, thank you for saying yes, even though you didn't know it was me. That's good.
Yeah.
You've got some time on your hands, have you?
I just, when the agent calls and they say, oh, you've got this thing or this thing, I will often Google and then I'll look at other guests that you've had on and what your vibe is. Yeah. And so just solely based on your vibe, I said, yeah. Oh. And your presence out there. And then I thought, Kidd is a very interesting name, Kidd. Yeah. And I know a great family of kids from my childhood, actually, strangely. Yeah, good people. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that the Kidd name has done good things for you in your life already.
And my best friend is actually my best friend. Her name's Sabrina Kidd, and she's a great stylist. She was a stylist for for The Voice, for what's that woman's name from America, black woman who's on The Voice. Anyway, Jennifer Hudson.
Right.
She's a great woman, Sabrina. So anyway.
Yay, the kids. Awesome. Well, yes, it's me. Hello. Thank you for coming to be on my podcast. I'm especially pleased that you didn't realise it was me and you just thought the podcast was good, because that's a massive compliment to me.
Yeah, I did my research, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you would. Well, look, for anyone listening who doesn't know who you are, shamefully, would you please introduce yourself?
Which will be most people, because essentially I am, and have been for most of my career, a poet.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to be famous, you'd be a bit stupid to begin with being a poet. You know what I mean? I want to be famous. What do you want to be? A poet! It's like, you lose at the first hurdle.
Think again.
Yeah, exactly. So my name is Lemn Sissay, and I am a writer and creative. I guess people have started to use that term. And I wrote poems for the Olympics in 2012, and I have poems on walls and stuff, and I write plays as well. And I've done like poetry with music as well, actually, funnily enough. And I do bits of radio documentary stuff. Is this sounding like me?
Yeah, I think so.
To you? Okay, all right.
I recognise that person through the words you're saying. Yeah.
I think. Yeah, and I do like being on stage as well. So I like being able to interpret some of my own words on stage in front of a live audience.
Well, the first time I ever heard about you was a few years ago now, and it was on one of your poems on a wall in Manchester, and I can't remember where I was, and I can't remember which poem it was, so that's a really bad way of telling the story, but it intrigued me because I thought, this person's words are on a wall, and they were really moving words, and that's when I started delving a little bit into your world. So I'm really interested to know, so you mentioned music, and as you know, I'm a musician.
Yes.
What do you see as being the difference or the similarities between poetry and lyrics? And so I suppose also then, what made you want to do poetry and maybe not be a songwriter or something else that would use verse?
Well, firstly, I would say that a lot of songwriters did begin as poets, and a lot of novelists began as poets. And I think the difference between... I'll give you examples of that. Adele began as a poet. Also, Amy Winehouse began as a poet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Tupac Shakur, the rapper, also, he started as a poet. And you can find a book of Tupac Shakur's work. Tupac Shakur is like a legendary rapper who passed away very early on, for anybody who doesn't know. Adele is a singer who used to do some gigs at the poetry circuit in London, and also Amy Winehouse's poetry is shown in the documentary that was made about her, the documentary film. So, and Morrissey was a poet, began as a poet. So many lyricists started as poets. I was trying to think of Jarvis Cocker, whether he started as a poet, because he has very particular opinions on the nature of the difference between lyrics and poetry. However, the primary difference, Laura, is that with lyrics, you have to allow the music to finish the line, or even begin the line, or be most of the line.
Yeah.
And I think that if the lyrics are too dense, almost too earnest, I mean, I don't believe that's true. It's the wrong word. Too dense is the word. If lyrics try to fill all of the space in the reader's or the listener's mind, they will confuse the music. And I find a lot of poets who work with music tend to be very self-righteous about all of their words have to be in the song.
Right, okay.
Without realising that actually a lyric must allow the music to do the talking.
That makes sense. That's a really, really brilliant way of putting it. I suppose I'm asking because as a lyricist myself, and as someone who deals with a lot of like inner critic stuff, as we all do, and should I be doing this? Am I any good? Etc. I think of poetry as this sort of hallowed thing, which is way above lyric writing, because to me, lyric writing comes quite naturally and maybe it feels easy. in the way that something you're good at can feel easy and maybe not worth much. So in my mind, poets are like sitting there really thinking about things and really putting together something different. And I wonder if I was to say, I've written a poem, as someone who hasn't studied poetry, who hasn't read loads of poetry, poets would be like, you think you have, but actually that's just a pop song, you know, that kind of thing. So that's why I'm asking, I guess.
Oh, poets don't have to do that to you. Oh, no, not at all. No, they'll do that to each other day and night.
Really?
Day and night. And let me just make it very clear to you that the nonsense poetry, the light, funny poetry of Spike Milligan is just as important as anything in The Ancient Mariner, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. It's very important to know that there is as much silly verse, literally called silly verse, as there is Shakespearean sonnets, possibly more. So this idea that is cultivated about the hallowed land of the poem, like if you enter a poem, it should be like entering a church, you know.
Yeah.
You need to whisper amongst the poetry because there is a greater thing than you in which you are inhabiting when you read a poem. It's the propaganda that many an institution has done to separate the working human, the person on the street, the you, the me, from this very powerful medium. What I'm trying to say is that poetry is as much about a dustbin person, I was going to say dustbin man then, as it is to a poet in Oxford or Cambridge.
Yeah.
The separation of people from poetry is like the separation of people from free thinking.
Yeah.
Poetry it's anarchy. It's emotional anarchy. It will not be pushed around. It will not be told that it is one thing when it is so many things.
Yeah.
It is a disabler of narrative. So the idea that we should feel like we're not good enough to read it, that it is better than us, that has been instituted by humans, by people, by institutions, to stop us from accessing that place. Oh my God, can you imagine if everybody did love poetry, wanted to write it and read it? You know, politics would change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Everything would change. So I think there's a reason why, you know, why people feel like they're not good enough to read poetry.
Well, for me, I don't want to blame school for everything in my life because it was a considerable time ago now, and that's lazy. But English lit classes that dissected poems beyond all sort of joy really did a number on me. And so I have enjoyed poetry in more recent years, but I always wonder, like, am I reading it too fast? Am I supposed to read the poems a few more times? What am I supposed to get from it? How do I give it like everything it deserves for me to get the most out of this thing, to try and understand it and things like that? And I wonder if people feel the same way as me, that sometimes it's kind of this impenetrable code that I cannot crack, or I'm not good enough or intelligent enough to crack. And I think it's like what you're saying, these institutions have tried to put us off enjoying these things, maybe.
I mean, if I was to introduce you to music, and I was only going to give you Beethoven to start with.
Yeah.
And then not only was I going to give you Beethoven, but that I was going to break down what a concerto is. And so you would have to understand it from that level. If I was going to begin on that, you might hate music forever. Because of not, and actually that's ridiculous, because Beethoven, there's nothing to be disliked about that music.
No.
Well, but the way it's so taught to you or introduced to you will make you feel like you never want to hear music again because you're not good enough. And then we'll go to a concert where nobody applauds after a brilliant concert, you know, or after the middle of a concert or after a break in the concert. You know, you don't understand the language of classical music, and then it becomes classical music, and you never feel good enough then.
Yeah, you're right.
And then you start to define the world by what is and what isn't classical music. You're like, oh, thank God for pop music, because we don't have to listen to that classical music.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, and isn't it nice that classical musician is doing a pop tune as well? All these false straw men narratives get built up that basically get abused by marketeers. So then we can market you to this market and them to that market. And the fact is that it is to do with schools, and it is to do with education, the institution of education. That is why poetry is felt to be very difficult. And if you were to become a teacher tomorrow, an English teacher, and you had to teach poetry, you've imbued that feeling that you had at school yourself. So that gets passed on to the student, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, makes sense.
And it's the saddest thing. It's the saddest thing because poetry is so beautiful, so much about the human spirit, and it just hurts me when I think of the builder, going, "Oh yeah, I don't like poetry," But then he'll listen to David Gray, he'll listen to Bob Dylan, he'll listen to a rapper, Jay-Z, whatever, all who use poetry. Anyway.
So what got you into poetry? Because I've read your memoir and I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
When I say I loved it, I don't love what happened to you, because I just spent the whole time feeling really, really pissed off that those people did all those things to you. So I was mostly angry while reading, not at you, obviously.
Yeah.
But then I also had so many questions, because I was thinking, how did the poetry come into your life then? What sparked that for you? Because I can imagine, as a musician, I can imagine what an escape that would have been, and a way of holding on to your identity or creating your identity as a child, in the situation you were in. But that wasn't mentioned in the book very much. So I'd love to know more about that, if that's okay.
Lara, we could both give each other reasons for doing what we do, okay? You could find a narrative, but let me just be really clear. I was not, as a young person, thinking, I think I've found my calling here. Yes, this is the moment. I read a poem written by Coleridge. As a child, I saw it. And then at night, I looked out at the moon. And the poem came to me at the same time. And I thought, and I held my fists tightly and thought, this is my future. I must walk this way.
It's funny, because that exact same thing happened to me. So that's nice.
But we didn't, we did something that we felt good about, maybe. And then years later, somebody else might have said, "Oh, you're not bad at that."
Yeah.
And we might have clung to that little bit of positive feedback like it was a piece of wood on an ocean in a storm, and thought, "Oh, I don't know what this is, but if I hold on to it, maybe, I don't know. I'll just hold on to it."
Yeah.
And then something else happens. You get asked at school to read one of your poems or sing a song, and you start to get this feeling inside of yourself when you do it that feels good, and it's got nothing to do with anybody else. You just think, there's something about me growing and this being with me. And then you think, I can't really be without this. And that becomes like normal.
Yeah.
It becomes normal. You're like, I can't do without that. No, I've got to do this. I mean, that's who I am, isn't it? And that, like, this seamless event happens. I don't know what an event horizon is, but this feels like an event horizon, whatever that means, because it's seamless between growing into an adult and thinking, oh, no, this is what I do. This is something I have a thing for. Mm-hmm. Going from doing it to that, to like, this is part of my person. This is who I am. I don't know how the hell that happened.
Yeah.
It can't be just like, oh, well, I went to school and my foster father was a poet and was an English teacher. And I don't think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. No, I don't think it is either.
Do you know what I mean? Oh, no, but it's really interesting because in interviews, I'm often asked the question, and I used to say, oh, well, I was brought up, my foster father was an English teacher. When I went into care, I found that when I wrote a poem, it felt good. And then I read one at school and I had a great English teacher. I think it's something more than can be explained, something magical, something moving, something mercurial, something otherworldly. And I think it's available to everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think, I'm any more special than anybody else. I feel lucky that I've been able to connect with something bigger than me.
Well, the reason I'm glad I asked you that question, although on the surface it's simplistic, is because we got to the thing that I really agree with, which is that this stuff is available to everyone.
Yeah.
And this podcast is not for wannabe poets necessarily, or wannabe musicians, or 5 top tips to smash your Instagram as a whatever. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with, we are people, we are humans, you're a human, I'm a human, you've had your experience, I've had my experience. The people listening might feel like making art of any kind is something that only you or I can do, which is nonsense. And I'm so glad you just told them, because I'm telling them all the time. And you're backing me up, so thank you. Because it is magical, but it isn't out of reach. It's self-expression.
It's the big scam. It's the same thing with education that you were talking about earlier on with poetry.
Yeah.
The idea is that this is for the hallowed artists like me and you, Lara. And it's not just an arty belief that we have. It is central to our working practice that actually creativity is not the monopoly of artists.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
There was definitely a shift in my life when I've had to do what I thought was a brave thing and introduce myself as a musician, or call myself a musician, use that word. I'm an artist, I'm a musician. That was scary for me. And it took a while, maybe a lot longer than it should have done on paper, to say that. And I just think it's quite a ballsy thing to go, I'm a poet, because of all the things that word means or can mean, or, the kind of visual images that pop up in someone's head when you say you're a poet. Negative and positive, I imagine.
Yeah, I just a big piece of advice just for anybody out there. I think this is an advice thing that I'd like to share. And it's in the past for me now, but if you're going to do Tinder, don't put poet. Don't put poet. But pretty much anything else: dustbin person, street cleaner. Did
that not work for you then? Putting poet on your profile.
Toilet brush seller. Anything other than poet. Just putting that out there.
I want to ask you so much more about that, but it might not be appropriate.
Go ahead.
Is it worse or better than actor? Because there's that thing about actor is bad.
Oh, it is so much worse than actor. I mean, actor, actor can go from, a big famous person to somebody who's just out there trying. But at least an actor will try. You know what I mean? They're going to try to impress you in some way. Right. Poets just haven't got the word poet. Is next to sort of like artistic translation of depression. Also, I guess you'll be paying for your own meal. I mean, I'm so joking on a stereotype there, because I have lived my entire adult life as a poet. I've travelled the world. I've never been wanting for anything as a it's sort of financially. It's provided me with a life, a full life, and I knew I was a poet from the age of 12. So it's amazing how a stereotype can actually become real because it's so believed,
Yeah.
But it's never been the case for me, honestly. I mean, I'm lucky, I guess, in some ways, and I must always understand that. But then you get, people whose job is to, make phone covers, just very specific roles, and being a poet is just a very specific job description.
Yeah. What's the thing you're most proud of creating so far?
That's a good question. I think I'm proud of how I've used poetry to find my family.
Mm.
By becoming known as a poet, I could then sort of really encourage the media, documentaries, television people, etc., to go in search of in search for my family. Yeah, I think I'm probably most proud about that. But I'm proud of the Christmas dinners, which is a thing that I organise um, for people who've been in care and then left care and stuff. I'm proud of that.
It's time for Correspondence Corner now, where I chuck the microphone very safely into the audience to find out more about you. So, what was the first album to change your life? And what was the most recent?
Hi, my name is Sarah and I'm from Bristol. I'm a mum and an artist and I work in the hospitality industry. My mission in life is to find connection and meaning in relationships and things. I love to get lost in art and music and hang out with the people I love. The first album that changed my life would be Strangelove's Time for the Rest of Your Life, which came out in 1994. I found Strangelove really randomly by flicking through a Q magazine, and there was this review that just caught my eye. There was a picture of Patrick Duff, the frontman, in this kind of fetal position pose with just the most intense stare I'd ever seen, and I was immediately intrigued. The review wasn't great, actually. It was pretty average, but I took no notice of it because I just had this real strong feeling that I'd found something really special and this was really important. And there was a smattering of lyrics that I immediately fell in love with, and I just couldn't wait to listen to them because I hoped that the sound matched what I imagined in my head. I went to Replay Records in Bristol in the Haymarket, which was my favourite place to buy music in the mid-90s, and bought the 12-inch of Is There a Place and took it home, and I can remember being so excited on the bus to actually get home and play it. When I finally got home and played it, the intro is quite long, and it took me until the singing started to realise that I had it on the wrong speed because I was used to 7-inch singles, not 12-inch singles, so I had it on 45, not 33 and a third, and it sounded like Pinky and Perky. So I had a little giggle to myself and put it on the right speed. Actually, it sounded really great, speeded up. It still sounded very, very good. But and then I kind of was swallowed by this wall of sound and this new experience, which was, finding something that is truly yours. And it felt really, really intense and really special. And I started to kind of feel like I was growing up, I guess. And the song has this urgency and this passion about it. And it's about feeling like you don't belong, which is how I always felt. I realised I found my place. One of my places is with this band. And I continue to become completely obsessed with them. Still am completely obsessed with them. They're the best live band I've ever seen in my life. They were just incredible. The most recent album to change my life would be Amanda Palmer's There Will Be No Intermission. I've been a fan of Amanda's for quite some time, but there was something about this particular album, which came out in 2019, that resonated very strongly with me personally. It came at exactly the right time to tune in with what I was feeling, which was something very precise. It was about becoming unstuck, the nature of being a human, and more precisely to being a mother to a young child in this particular tumultuous point in time. The first song I heard was Drowning in the Sound. I'd become pretty morbidly obsessed with the climate crisis, and this song came and it just blew me away. It was like a mirror. She could see exactly what I could see. She felt exactly what I felt. And it really helped me to deal with those feelings. I shared it with pretty much everyone I know, and the beautiful, amazing video that went with it. And I felt the same way about the album when I finally got that too. There's a song called A Mother's Confession, which is about Amanda's honest experience as a parent, about how her baby fell from a height during a nappy change and she accidentally shoplifted and once accidentally left her baby in the car. And there's a line in it which is, "At least the baby didn't die." And I think that's how all mothers feel, but they never get the chance to say that, yeah, I deserve a medal for keeping this kid alive every day. The songs are sophisticated yet raw and so truthful. The most brutally honest songs I think I've ever heard. I can't get enough of Amanda. Her community on Patreon is so strong and supportive, and the Shadowbox forum, the Dresden Dolls and Amanda Palmer forum, is just the best place to hang out. I was really lucky to get to see her on this tour and had a really strange experience the day of the gig where all my trains were cancelled and everything was kind of messed up, and I ended up stuck in Cardiff by myself till I think it was like 3 a.m, which meant that I hung around after the show and I got to meet Amanda and I got to tell her I loved her and that she has helped me get through so many things in my life by talking about death and abortion and what it is to be a young girl and what it is to be a mum. And I get quite emotional just talking about it. And it was probably the best gig I've seen in the last, 5 years. And I got to stand up and sing with a huge crowd in Cardiff, and we chorused "At Least the Baby Didn't Die."
Massive thanks to Sarah for sharing her memories with me. Listening to your stories has fast become one of the highlights of my week, so please do keep them coming. It's super easy to get involved. Just go to speakpipe.com/penfriend and you can record your answers and send them to me right there on the page. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Now, back to my conversation with Lemn. You've been a poet for a fairly long while now, and I'm really interested to know how the internet has impacted your work and how you feel about it at the moment.
The internet is the biggest publisher that there's ever been since the first words were written. You know, there are more words passing between more people now than since the beginning of time. So we are living in revolutionary times where a lyric that I write or a poem that I write now could be shared in Ethiopia within a second. So, you know, we're living in a time where an Indian poet can get a following around the world for her work on love. You know, that's actually happening. You know, a sort of teenage young poet has become a international phenomenon. So you wouldn't be wrong if you were to say that there was a lot of terrible work out there. That's a very, easy approach to take to the biggest publisher since the beginning of time. But the fact is there's a lot of incredible work out of there. And if you walk into any bookshop, you'll find that you don't like 99% of the work in there. You do like 1%. And it's the same with the internet, Mm-hmm. Take what you like, promote what you are and what you like, etc. So, sorry, it's a long way of saying the internet has been a gift for the spoken word, the sound, the arts, the visual field, etc. Mm-hmm. So I embrace it.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think you use it in such a lovely way because your blog is always so interesting and so personal. And, and likewise your Twitter feed. But I do know that a lot of people find problems with social media, just in terms of the way it can kind of suck energy out of you, the way that it can get really nasty or feel like something that we need to constantly check, because there's a lot of sort of chemicals going on there with dopamine and stuff. How do you feel about that aspect of it?
Yeah, one has to be careful about the hit you can get from it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be careful. I do a morning tweet every day. So that is to say that what I try and do is I try and come up with a message and then that I write in the morning, and then I put it out to the to whoever reads it. But I do it for myself. It's a sort of exercise to warm myself up. And this morning's, and the only reason I'm mentioning it is because of what we're talking about, the online world. It's just 4 lines: drawn to the feed like a pig to the trough. I read and read and need to turn it off. That's it. Simple as that. But the thing about that is that that's iambic. There's 10 syllables per line. So every day I try to exercise myself in some way, shape or form so that I'm trying to have fun, but also yesterday's. Let me read you yesterday's because it was ridiculous. There, the bark upon the beach, and so, likewise, I went to sea. Would that it were within my reach to bark and bite at poetry. That makes absolutely no sense to you right now, but if you see my explanation about it later on, you'll see that it does sort of make sense.
I love the wordplay of that, though.
I wish I'd have not said this now.
Why?
Why are you regretting?
Why do you feel like an arse? Why?
Because that's quite difficult to explain what's going on in those 4 lines. It sounds suitably obscure for a poet.
Yeah.
There, the bark upon the beach. And so, likewise, I went to sea. Would that it were within my reach to bark and bite at poetry. So, in the first line, I say, there, the bark upon the beach. And the way it's spelt is the bark, as in the bark upon the tree, on the beach, a beech tree.
Yeah.
The bark upon the beach. But it could also be taken as the bark of a dog upon the beach, spelt B-E-A-C-H. So, and the next line is, and so, likewise, I went to sea. The sea could just as much be about S-E-A.
Yeah.
So if you say, and so, likewise, I went to sea, you're obviously referencing the dog's bark that was upon the beach.
Yeah.
Went out to sea, the bark.
Mm-hmm.
The next line is, would that it were within my reach. Would that it were is what you say when you have a wish.
Yeah.
So would that it were. But I've spelt would as in W-O-O-D, which references the beach at the beginning.
Yeah.
In the first line, there, the bark upon the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Would that it were within my reach. And the last line, to bark and bite at poetry, that is insinuating the phrase that a bark is bigger than its bite. Which is what people do about my morning tweets. They think that they are just a throwaway thing. They think their bark is louder than their bite. They think that because they go out every day, I have people say, who does he think he is? His poetry's crap, blah, blah, blah. So to bark and bite at poetry. So it's quite a complex 4 lines.
Yeah.
And I know that, but other people may not, when they read it. So, sorry, it was nice to explain that for you.
I loved it. I love the explanation, and I love that you did that, because hopefully people listening can understand that there's fun in there, but it's not something that you just wrote and then moved on.
Yeah.
There's loads more going on. But you can enjoy it in different ways as well, without having to go into all of that. Or you can go into it. I suppose there's a choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can enjoy it as wordplay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I find it so strange, and I'm not a naive person, but I find it so strange that there are people who will read stuff like that and then have a go at you because they don't like what you do. Because I just think, isn't life too short to do that? And just go and find something you like then. Like, you don't like this, that's fine. It doesn't mean that Lemn Sissay is wrong or bad. It means that that's not the thing for you, right? Plenty more things. There's so many things.
I love us artists, but at one level, and actually it can go as, I know very famous people who are like this as well, but at one level, artists can be very destructive to each other.
Yeah.
And actually the act of being an artist is actually to be as far away from unproductive negativity as you can.
Yeah.
At the beginning of our careers, quite often, we're in a group of people, and there can be all kinds of strange negative practices that those groups do because they don't know. They don't know what it is to live as an artist. They don't know what it is what is needed. And one of the things that's needed is a kindness, that we need to ourselves, and a kindness, therefore, to others. And these are the things that will last us for our whole career.
Yeah. Yeah. I think more kindness generally is a wonderful thing to aim for.
Yeah. And as self-employed people, it's very easy for us to slip into self-pity, into self-centeredness, into, because we're looking at our own cash flows or our own this, that, or the other, our own creations. We're in front of an audience. It must be all about us, mustn't it?
Yeah.
This is why people like our mutual friend, Robin. Marcus Brigstock, I think of, Marcus's partner, Rachel Paris. There's a lot of good people in this industry.
Yeah.
But I don't think the public can tell the difference.
No, probably not.
That's fine, as long as we know who the good ones are,
Yeah. I think you're so right about that our job is to stay away from that negativity. And that's really hard when... And I don't mean hard like get the tiny violins out, poor me, but I just mean like if we're using things like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, you post something with the best intentions, and then if even if the sort of like percentage of negativity is quite low, that's the stuff that sticks in your gut. It's not someone going, your song changed my life, your poem changed my life. It's the person that goes, who do you think you are then? Because it kind of speaks to all of the worst negativity that we have inside that makes us be an artist, I guess, because that's just, that's just how we are. But that's the stuff that I go, oh yeah, who do I think I am? And it's just some random dude who I've never met him. He's never even listened to a song necessarily. And that's what stays with me. And I know that I have to protect myself from that. I try really hard to do that. But it's hard. That's difficult.
I so agree with you. And we have to watch our mental health.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that can be, I just agree. It's... it can be soul destroying when somebody, to think that somebody can just give you a nasty review because they don't like the look of you, but they don't say that, and that can go online,
Yeah.
It's cruel. We have to manage our way through, through that.
Yeah. I don't think there's a way of educating people to stop doing that. So we just have to not read it, or I don't know. Yeah,
or manage our online world. I've got quite a few friends who are actors who will only do Instagram. They don't want to do Facebook or Twitter or blah, because they don't want so many points of contact. And I get that, actually. That sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
God, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, blah, blah. If I upload one, I've got to upload the other. It's just crazy.
But do you enjoy it?
I love it. I loves it, I does.
Yeah, because I love being in contact with people.
Yeah. Like yesterday, I put up on Twitter, hey, I'm going to Palm 2 for coffee. Anybody want to come along? Just come down. 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for a fridge to be delivered. Anyway, and then somebody came.
Oh, nice.
He sat down and he said, I saw you at the Royal Court Theatre a couple of years ago, and it was actually a really important gig for me. And then he told me about his story, and and it was just a really profoundly wonderful meeting. So sometimes, I guess as a man it's easier to do than as a woman. You can't do the same thing. I've started to realize all kinds of things that men can do that women can't, and this is one of them. It's just to go, I'm in a cafe, you want to pop in, have a coffee with me, then do so.
I used to do that. I did that when I first started using Twitter, like 2007, 2008. I would do that. But it was because there was a really manageable small number of people. And back then, I do feel like it seemed weirder to chat to people a lot on Twitter and never meet them than the other way around. So it seemed completely natural. And I met a bunch of people who were really interesting. And I don't mean that now I've got so many followers, I can't, it's unmanageable. It's not like that at all. I just mean that it's changed. Like the environment has changed so drastically in the time since then that I'm not going to be doing that now. But I think it's beautiful.
It's tricky for me, actually. But occasionally I do it, and because people don't tend to come anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just call me and say, "Hey, Lem, I can't be there. I'm in Wigan or wherever."
Okay.
And then one or two people come, and it's always interesting people.
Yeah.
Who have interesting stories to tell, and I sort of like it, and I like oh God, our lives are so bloody ordered. We have to be here to do that, to get this, to know that, You know your set list, you get your set list together, you get it and you do it. And I like a bit of spontaneity, a bit of crazy spontaneity,
Yeah, I think inviting randomness is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I like that. Now, look, I'm sure you've got loads to do today. Would you mind if I just asked you which 3 pieces of your own work you'd recommend as a gateway for people who are new to your world of poetry and plays?
Today I just had a paper written about me, that breaks down all of my performative sort of work, and it's just fascinating, but it's not a gateway. I would go with my Desert Island discs on BBC Radio 4. Mm-hmm. You can just find it online. It's dead easy.
Yeah.
I would go with a poem called Invisible Kisses, that gets read on once every couple of weeks at a funeral or a wedding somewhere in the country.
Wow.
I might go with 21st century poem on the Left Field album, Leftism. That's me. Or most of all, the number one would be to read My Name Is Why. Mm-hmm. Is that a gateway drug?
I think so. I heartily recommend that book. I can't describe the feeling I had when I was reading it, but it was mostly, I think, I was just so impressed that I know people, I didn't want to say the word, "Oh, that's so brave," because I think people probably say that to you so much about that book. And I'm not saying it's not brave, but I think that's a very sort of like glib thing to say.
You're saying it's not brave, aren't you?
No.
So out of order.
I'm saying that it's more complicated and complex than that, in that as someone who makes art out of stuff that's happened to me in my life as well, I found it profoundly moving and interesting and brave and beautiful that you are able to make something out of what happened to you, because I think it would be very much more easy to just sort of bury it, try and skip past it, not deal with it. And to deal with it in a public way like this will give so much to other people. So that's a very generous thing. So that's what I'd use the word generous rather than brave personally. Please read it, people who are listening. It's a really one of a kind thing. And yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you, Laura.
But it was, yeah. And that can't have been an easy thing to do. But then nothing worthwhile is easy.
No, it's right. Sometimes when you sing a song, only you knew what inside that song, what moved you.
Yeah.
It's a private message from you. Some songs, not all, some. Mm-hmm. Nobody else knows.
Yeah.
They all think it's about something else.
Oh, yeah.
Only you know why you wrote it or where you were. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a thing about I'm going to say it wrong.
Specificity.
Specificity?
Specificity. Specificity.
There's a thing about being specific, which is really powerful. So the more specific a novel, a poem, I can't talk about poetry because I'm a musician, or a song is, the more specific to my experience the thing I make is, I think the more that can transform and resonate with someone else. Because no, they didn't go through exactly the same thing as me, but I'm a human, not an alien, so they will have experienced the same feelings in a different way. So yes, they're not hearing about their specific thing that happened to them, but they're very capable of bringing that feeling into that period of time they read the poem, the period of time they listen to the song,
That's why, just to end on this though, that's why it's important to be specific, because people open their own stories when they see you open yours. They're not interested in you telling them what they think or what they feel about their story. All of our stories are unique. You know, as writers and as artists, you know, we lean into story, whether it's our story or not. We lean into story, and we tell the truth as best as we can. And that makes artists and creators kind of warriors, kind of as strong as any builder, any carpenter, you know. We're on the front line, saying the unsaid, speaking the unspoken, and that gives other people permission to do the same.
What a beautiful way to end our chat. Thank you so much. And thank you for working through the gremlins with me. I don't know what was going on, but we got there.
Thank you. We worked through our gremlins.
Massive, massive, massive thanks to Lemn for being such a warm, funny and wise guest. What a treat. Please do head now to penfriend.rocks/Lemn, Lemn, where I have gathered together links to his work for you to explore. His daily poems on Twitter are really wonderful too. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Attention Engineer is a completely independent production, and so your kind sharing, ratings and reviews make a massive difference. Remember at the start of our conversation, Lemn said he didn't realise he'd already met me when he agreed to be a guest? That's how important ratings and reviews are. You're very powerful, and I hope you continue to wield your power in a kind and benevolent fashion. Huge thanks and love to every member of my Correspondence Club for powering this podcast. If you don't know what that is, you're very welcome to join us at any time. Just visit penfriend.rocks for more info. I'm off to play with synthesizers now, so I hope you have as good a week as is possible in this bizarre year, and I look forward to beaming into your ears again next time. Take care.